I stopped by my son's house and brought my granddaughter a present. She tugged on my sleeve and whispered, "Grandpa, can you tell Mommy not to put anything in my juice anymore? That juice always makes me so sleepy afterward. My eyes just close, but I need to play. I really don't like it." I went cold. I drove her straight to the doctor. When the doctor looked at the test results, he closed the office door and stayed silent for a long time. Before we go on, you're watching the channel. Tell me in the comments, has a child or grandchild ever said something to you that made you unsure whether to laugh or cry? Subscribe to the channel. There's a story ahead that will give you chills. Let's begin. Robert Miller's back finally let up on Thursday. Before that, he had been lying on the floor, not on the bed, but exactly on the floor, with a rolled towel tucked under his lower back, talking to the ceiling because there was no one else to talk to. His herniated disc flared up every fall, and every time he promised himself he would finally have surgery, and every time he found a reason to wait. On Saturday, October 11th, Sophie turned 7. Michael sent pictures through Messenger. A cake with purple frosting, paper party hats, Sophie blowing out the candles. Robert scrolled through the pictures while lying on the floor and felt as if he had missed not a birthday, but something that could never be reshot. By the next Saturday, October 18th, he could sit behind the wheel again. The purple gift bag with the bow had been standing by the door since the previous Wednesday. Robert set it on the passenger seat, buckled it in with the seatbelt, and smirked. 30 years of experience. Arms elbow deep in compressor oil, and here he was driving around a gift bag with a bow like it was a wedding cake, even strapping it in so it wouldn't fall at a turn. A florist delivery guy, nothing more. Except instead of a tip, he carried guilt the size of an industrial freezer. Karen opened after the third ring, holding her phone between her shoulder and ear. "Yeah, she's upstairs in her room," she tossed out, nodding somewhere toward the staircase, and disappeared deeper into the house without turning around. No hello, no come in. Robert stood in the entryway, shifted the bag from one hand to the other, and thought that in 30 years he had never been greeted at a job site with hospitality quite that outstanding. Even old Hank at the meatpacking plant, whose entire friendliness consisted of the phrase, "Oh, it's you," would at least point where to go. Sometimes he even pointed in the right direction. A homemade sign hung on Sophie's bedroom door, Sophie's room. The letters bounced in every direction. One letter leaned sideways, and the dot over the I had become a heart. He knocked twice, their secret signal. The door did not open right away. Sophie stood in the doorway wearing pajamas at 2 in the afternoon, on a Saturday. She looked at him as if she were trying to remember who he was. Then a smile appeared slowly with effort, and Robert felt something inside him tighten, quick and painful. "Grandpa." She stepped toward him and hugged his leg. "You finally came. I've been waiting for you for 100 years. I'm here, Soph, guilty as charged. A whole week late. Shame on this old man. If I showed up to a factory compressor like that, my boss would have thrown me out by the collar the same day, and he would have been absolutely right. But you can't be late for work at all," Sophie said seriously. "Daddy says people get in trouble for that. And I can be late to see you? I'm not mad. I'm not going anywhere from my room. I just sit here and wait for you." Robert's throat tightened. It sounded so simple and so grown-up from a 7-year-old child. "Well, if you're not mad, then here, take your treasure." He handed her the bag. "This thing stood in my hallway for a whole week. I swear it was about to start saying hello to me out of boredom." Sophie took it with both hands, carried it to the bed, and sat down. She untied the bow, slowly, layer by layer. even though she used to tear open wrapping paper so hard the scraps flew all over the floor. Inside was a soft fox, reddish-orange, with sly embroidered eyes and a fluffy tail curled like a question mark. "Oh, she's so cool. Her name is Fiona," Sophie said, turning it in her hands. "Why Fiona, exactly? Pretty name, of course, but why for a fox?" "Well, look at her eyes. They're so sneaky. A real little fox." She smiled then, wide and warm, and for 1 second Robert breathed out. "Grandpa, our teacher at school, told us foxes actually aren't sneaky at all. Can you imagine? That's just fairy tales in books. They're just very, very careful because they're small." Robert sat on the edge of the bed. Being careful is basically the same as being sneaky, just wrapped in a nicer package so grown-ups don't scold you. Sophie gave a short, quiet laugh, and the laugh broke off sooner than it should have. She placed Fiona on the pillow, exactly in the center, fixed the fox's tail, and fell silent. She sat with her legs dangling and picked at the pattern on the blanket with her fingernail. Robert waited. He did not know what for, exactly, but he felt it. The child was gathering herself the way people do before jumping into water, when they stand at the edge and count to 3. And then they jump not on 3, but when they finally dare. Sophie looked up at him. Not the way children look when they ask for cartoons, but the way they look when they are checking whether it is safe. "Can you?" She leaned forward, placed both palms on his knee, and whispered, "Grandpa, can you tell Mommy not to put anything in my juice anymore? That juice always makes me so sleepy afterward. My eyes just close, but I need to play. I really don't like it." Robert did not move. He did not grab her by the shoulders. He did not ask her to repeat it. He slowly nodded once and said in an ordinary voice, the kind used for perfectly ordinary things, "I understand, Soph." Calmly, no panic. "We're going to deal with this very, very soon. I promise. Cross my heart. Ironclad Grandpa, promise." Grandpa promised. So Grandpa will break himself in half if he has to, but he'll get it done. Think about it. When have I ever let you down in a big way? "Well, you did this week," Sophie answered, without accusation, simply stating a fact. "You didn't come to my birthday. Fair point. You got me there. I've got nothing to say." His throat tightened again. "I promise. That was the last time. I will never let you down again." Cold moved through his chest, dropped into his stomach, and stayed there, heavy and still. 30 years working on refrigeration units had taught him one rule. When something goes wrong on a site, don't touch the compressor until you find the leak. First, facts. He helped Sue put on her sneakers and jacket, tucked Fiona under his arm because, as Sophie announced, "She's coming with us too, Grandpa," and went downstairs. Karen stood in the kitchen, scrolling on a tablet. "Karen, we're going outside for some air. We'll probably drive over to the city park. We haven't had a proper talk in 100 years. "Fine, go ahead. I need to clean anyway," Karen tossed back. "Where did you hide her hat? It's not July out there. Look in the entry closet, top shelf, or she can go without it, for God's sake. The weather's perfectly normal. She won't freeze. It's October, plus there's wind off the river. It's not cold." Robert found the hat himself, pulled it down over Sophie's ears, and led her by the hand to the car. Karen did not come out of the kitchen. He buckled Sophie into the back seat, set Fiona beside her, and drove not to the park, but across town to a pediatric urgent care clinic on Lincoln Avenue. He drove exactly at the speed limit, although his feet wanted to mash the gas pedal through the floor. "Grandpa, where are we headed? The park is like totally the other way. We need to stop by and see one very good person for one very important thing. 15 minutes, no more." "A doctor, right? The hospital again. Look at that observational skill. How did you figure it out?" You said the exact same thing last time when you took me for my shot. You kept saying, a very good person, a very good person, and then your very good person gave me a painful shot. Robert smiled, though nothing about it was funny. I promise, Soph, no needles and no shots today. Grandpa's word. The clinic was open on Saturdays until 5. At the front desk, Robert said one word, urgent. They let him through. Dr. Samuel Anderson listened without interrupting. Robert, did she tell you how long this has been going on, even roughly? You know, doctor, I was afraid to question her too much or push. I thought she might get scared and shut down. Then we wouldn't get anything out of her at all. You did exactly the right thing. Too much pressure would only hurt here. All right, bring her in. We'll sort this out. Dr. Anderson ran a rapid test, a urine strip for sedating antihistamines. Results in 10 minutes. Then he drew blood from a vein for lab confirmation. Sophie sat on the exam table, swinging her legs and asking the doctor why there was a poster on the wall showing the inside of an ear, and whether it was true that there really was a tiny hammer inside an ear. Then she slid down, climbed onto Robert's lap, and fell asleep within a minute. She simply switched off. Fiona was clamped under her arm. Dr. Anderson came back with the results and closed the door behind him. He sat across from Robert and was silent for a moment. The rapid test is positive for diphenhydramine, he said quietly. A sedating antihistamine. Judging by the strength of the result and her clinical presentation, the dosage points to regular, repeated, systematic poisoning of the body. The blood work will confirm the exact numbers on Monday, but the picture is already clear. Robert folded his hands on his knees over the sleeping Sophie and breathed through his nose for several seconds. Robert, most likely it's over-the-counter allergy medicine or nighttime sleep aid liquid. The kind people keep in a medicine cabinet and don't take seriously because it's cheap and easy to buy. For an adult, one dose may be just drowsiness, maybe a sedative effect. But for a 7-year-old child, regular use of that kind of cocktail is a massive blow to the nervous system and a direct threat to her health. The protocol here is clear, Dr. Anderson said. Legally, I'm required to report this immediately to Child Protective Services. I understand that perfectly, doctor, but make one human concession for me. Give me until Monday morning. It's Saturday evening. Officials are at home right now. Nobody will lift a finger before Monday anyway, and at exactly 9 on Monday morning, I'll bring you ironclad proof that I've already started handling this officially myself. Dr. Anderson took off his glasses, wiped them on the hem of his coat, and put them back on. It was the kind of gesture people used to hide a decision they had already made. And if you don't bring me any paperwork by then, you'll have it on your desk. I give you my word. All right, we have an agreement. I'll wait until 9 Monday morning. The doctor nodded. If I have no confirmation at 9:01, I start the official process and make the call myself. One more thing, Robert. Do not take that little girl back to her mother's house today under any circumstances. Wasn't even in my thoughts. Her feet won't step inside that place again. Robert photographed the medical report up close so every letter could be read, then carried Sophie out to the car in his arms. She did not wake up. She only hugged Fiona tighter. In the parking lot, without starting the engine, he called Michael. Mike, hey. Listen, Sophie fell asleep in my back seat like a rock. Ran herself out today. I hate to wake her. Let her spend the night at my place, and tomorrow we'll talk everything over calmly. Yeah, no problem, Dad. Let her sleep at your place. Easier for us anyway, Michael answered. Robert could hear that his son was already thinking about something else. He put the phone on the dashboard and looked in the rearview mirror. Sophie slept turned toward the seat back. Fiona's reddish tail stuck out from under her arm. Robert took his work notebook out of the glove compartment, the one where he wrote down job numbers and site addresses, opened to a blank page, and wrote in large letters at the top, Monday, 9 o'clock. Underneath, he wrote 2 words, underlined them twice, and closed the notebook. Sophie fell asleep in the guest room by 9 that night. She lay down on her own, without persuasion, without fuss, placed Fiona on the pillow beside her, and closed her eyes. Robert stood in the doorway, listened to her breathing, deep, even, real, and quietly pulled the door shut. The first night without the drops. He would have liked to think that was why he could not sleep, but it was not anxiety. Robert Miller did not fall apart. He sat in the kitchen under the dim light above the stove, in front of a cooling mug of tea, and thought the way he thought over a diagram of a faulty unit when the pressure kept jumping and the cause was not obvious. 3 questions: how long, how deep, and, most important, why? The first 2 could be figured out. Tests, pharmacy receipts, a timeline, familiar tools. But the third question, why, remained an empty cell on the diagram and would not let him close his eyes. Liquid sleep medicine was cheap, easy to buy, and sold in every pharmacy. Adding it to juice took 10 seconds. But why would a mother sedate her own child? He went over every moment he had missed. Sophie's drowsiness during his last visit, her slow speech, her heavy eyelids in the middle of the day. He had blamed every signal on her age. School fatigue, autumn. He had trusted the wrong person, and trust had worked like anesthesia, turning off what should have hurt. By dawn, he had a plan as short as a parts list on a service call. Lawyer, investigator, documents, and not one word to Michael yet. He called his son at 7 in the morning. Michael picked up after the 5th ring, his voice sounding as if he had been woken on a Sunday and had not yet decided whether to be angry or frightened. Dad, hey. What happened? Are you in the hospital or is it the house? What? I'm alive and well. The ceiling's still where it belongs. Why jump straight to the hospital? You've never called before 9 in your life. I already mentally called 911 and an ambulance. Are you sure everything's okay? Absolutely. Pipes are dry, pulse is normal. I just woke up at the crack of dawn and started thinking about my granddaughter. Listen, Mike, have you noticed anything strange about Sophie lately? Strange how? Sleepy, sluggish, falling asleep on her feet. Michael went quiet, and Robert heard him sit up in bed and rub his face with his palm. That sound could not be mistaken for anything else. Karen says it's just the usual fall slump. Not enough vitamins, no sun, school dragging her down. She bought her some fizzy vitamins. They've been drinking those, I think. Robert closed his eyes. A fall slump. A pretty, convenient, harmless phrase. A curtain word. Listen, Mike, he said, in the voice he used when he asked for things he had already decided, but wanted the other person to think the decision was theirs. Let Sophie stay with me for a week or 2. Grandpa misses her. I need to rehabilitate myself somehow after missing her birthday. I'll drive her to school, feed her oatmeal, take her for walks. Good for my tone, too. Change of scenery for her. What do you think? Dad, I'm all for it. She passed out at your place in 5 minutes yesterday. I was jealous of that nervous system myself. I'll clear it with Karen, but I don't think she'll go to war over the right to make morning oatmeal. Then clear it. By evening, Michael called back. Karen was not against it. In fact, she said a change of scenery would be good for Sophie. She did not ask how long. She did not ask to put her daughter on the phone. She did not ask which school Robert would take her to on Monday or who would pick her up after class. She gave the child away with the ease of handing over an unnecessary object for a while, knowing it would be returned when convenient. Robert hung up and sat for a long time staring at the screen. It was not a mother letting her daughter stay with Grandpa. It was a woman freeing up her evenings. On Monday at 7:30, he called Dr. Anderson. "The little one is with me. Everything's calm. I'll be at the lawyer's office by 8. "Understood," the doctor answered. "I'm waiting for your signal by tonight that the case has started. If there's silence by the end of the day, you know my character. I'll start the process myself. I know. You won't have to. I'll do it." William Carter practiced law out of an office on the 3rd floor of an old business center, with high ceilings, heavy curtains, and bookshelves packed so tightly that it seemed if you pulled out one volume, the rest would collapse in an avalanche. Robert had gone to him 3 years earlier over a property dispute and remembered the main thing. Carter did not waste words on sympathy, but he spent them freely on instructions. Robert laid everything out in front of the attorney. The photos of the medical report, the description of Sophie's condition, the doctor's words. Carter studied the materials in silence for about 3 minutes, turning the phone with the pictures this way and that. The way people turn an X-ray image. "Robert, do you understand the scale of this catastrophe?" "Fully. Child endangerment, neglect, possibly felony child abuse with aggravating circumstances." Carter removed his glasses and set them in front of him, parallel to the edge of the desk with geometric precision. "All right, you've caught up on the legal base. Who else knows? The pediatrician, me, and now you. I haven't brought my son into it yet. Don't you dare, not now at least. Any husband in this situation goes into deaf psychological defense mode. Not anger, not shock, pure distilled denial. He'll take the position that his wife could never do such a thing, and you'll lose him as an ally forever. We need arguments with enough weight that his tongue won't even be able to defend this absurdity. Where do we start? Her banking history. Over-the-counter sleep medicine is cheap, but if she's buying bottles every week, the receipts will line up into a perfect graph, and the house has to be taken into account. Carter slid open a desk drawer and took out a business card. "Write down this contact, Ethan Brooks, private investigator." Incredibly meticulous, and at the same time, completely invisible. A rare hybrid, I assure you, and his main quality, most importantly, his mouth stays shut. In our situation, that is priceless. Robert took the card, thanked him, and had already stood up when Carter added, "And remember this, Robert. This is the most important part. Your granddaughter does not set foot in that house again, under any circumstances. Drive her to school across the whole city if you have to. Get up at 6 in the morning. You'll survive the logistics. Inconvenience is just laziness. A child's safety is the law." That evening, Robert called Dr. Anderson and confirmed the lawyer is involved. Ethan Brooks called on Wednesday. His voice was quiet, flat, without anything extra, like a household appliance manual being read out loud. "Robert Miller, good afternoon. I gathered the facts. Do you have time to meet?" They sat in a cafe on the edge of town, at plastic tables, with coffee from a machine while Sophie was at school. Robert had expected to see someone noticeable. Instead, he saw a man whose face you forgot while you were still talking to him. Average height, average age, gray jacket. Surveillance cameras probably recorded him, and then erased him immediately as unnecessary. Brooks placed a folder on the table without introduction, without build-up, opened it, and turned it toward Robert. "Meet Daniel Parker, 37 years old, regional sales director." Their history goes back at least 7 months. Photographs with timestamps. Karen and a man, tall, well-dressed, with the easy looseness of people who had never had to try very hard. Hotel receipts from downtown. Robert checked the dates, and everyone coincided with a night when Michael had been away on a business trip. The schedule of their meetings, Brooks continued, tapping the edge of the printout with his finger, lines up with pharmacy purchases with the precision of a metronome. Steady purchases of 3 to 4 bottles a week from the same pharmacy near the house. With that kind of amount, an adult would have to sleep like a stone for years. So the version about personal insomnia doesn't hold up. Robert sat and looked at the photographs, and the worst thing was not the affair. To be honest, he had been ready for that. The worst thing was the arithmetic. Karen needed free evenings. Sophie was at home. The solution turned out to be nauseatingly simple. Drops in the juice. The child falls asleep by 7. The mother is free until midnight. Not cruelty, logistics. And that made it worse than cruelty. Does Parker know she has a daughter? Robert asked. He knows. It was presented to him as if the child was difficult. Tantrums, constant crying, poor sleep. The man, apparently, did not dig too deeply and did not ask extra questions. Of course he didn't, Robert said. Very convenient. He closed the folder. Brooks did not rush him. He sat across from him with a paper cup of coffee and waited, letting the grandfather sit with something no one wants to sit with, but has to. Put all of this into an official report, Robert said at last. Timing, geolocation, photos. I want the attorney to have a complete folder ready for court before the process even begins. Robert forced himself to remember Karen as she had been 8 years earlier, when Michael first brought her to meet him. 25 years old, put together with the hard, charming energy of a girl who had grown up in a working-class neighborhood in Toledo, raised by a single mother, and achieved everything through stubbornness and will. Robert had liked her then. He wanted to be honest at least about that. Somewhere along the way, the life Karen had built stopped being something she loved and became scenery. A new house, a kitchen for photographs, a caption, "Morning in our little nest." Michael always out on job sites. Sophie alive, loud, demanding attention the way living children are supposed to. He understood the difference between evil and despair. That did not make Sophie less poisoned. That evening when he came home, he stepped into the guest room. Sophie was at school. The bed was made crookedly, childishly. Fiona lay on the pillow, exactly in the center. Over that week, the girl changed before his eyes. Her gaze grew brighter. Her speech became faster. She laughed more. At dinner the night before, she had told a story about a classmate who brought a hamster to school in his jacket pocket, and the hamster escaped during math class. She told it breathlessly, waving her fork with delight. Robert listened and thought that her laughter had been stolen from her drop by drop every evening. He sat at the kitchen table, opened his laptop, and began doing what he had done after every service call for 30 years, writing a report, date, description, what was found, what was done, email after email, each with a subject line and timestamp. Saturday, October 18th. Visit. Sophie's condition. Saturday, October 18th. Medical test results. Wednesday, October 22nd. Surveillance materials. He sent everything to himself so nothing would get mixed up later, so the attorney would receive a ready timeline and every fact would stand in its place. When he finished, he called William Carter and left a message. "William, everything is ready." Then he called Michael. "Mike, find time Friday evening. I'm waiting for you at my place. We need to have a serious talk." "What is this about? Give me some kind of hint." "We'll sort it out in person. The phone isn't for this." "Dad, you sound strange. You're making me nervous. Relax." Too early to panic. Just come. He hung up, closed the laptop, and looked again at the list of sent emails. A neat column of dates and subjects, arranged in chronological order. For 30 years he had documented Freon leaks at other people's sites and sent reports so no one could ask questions later. Now the site was different, and the stakes were beyond comparison, but the habit of precision remained the same. Michael arrived Friday around 7 in a dark gray SUV, wearing an unzipped jacket. Sophie was already asleep in the guest room. Robert had put her down early, read to her before bed, waited until her breathing evened out, and quietly closed the door. What had to happen at the kitchen table was not for 7-year-olds. A pot of chili sat on the stove. Michael walked in, sniffed the air, and stopped in the doorway. "Dad, seriously? Chili? What's wrong with chili? It's real food. Sit down while it's hot." "No, nothing's wrong. It's just that you make chili when the world is collapsing. When I was 21 and failed my finals, chili. When my business burned through its money, chili. With you, it's like a signal flare, except it comes in the form of a pot with beans and beef." Michael sat down, picked up a spoon, and looked at the pot. "There are portions here for 3. Is this bad news or very bad news? Eat." The answer "eat" means very bad news. It means eat while it's hot. Michael ate silently and intently, sometimes lifting his eyes to his father, who sat across from him with a mug of tea and did not touch the food. He took seconds not because he wanted them, but because he was stretching time. "Dad, why aren't you eating?" Michael nodded at the untouched mug. "You went to all that trouble." "My appetite disappeared around the moment I understood why I asked you to come. I cooked by inertia, 30 years of habit. Hands chop onions, head thinks about how to fix the world." Robert poured his son tea, waited until he finished, and gave him the last calm minutes before there would be none left. Then he stood, walked to the shelf over the refrigerator, and placed 3 things on the table. The medical report, a bank statement with pharmacy purchases highlighted in yellow, and Brooks's folder. Michael picked up the medical report, first slowly, with the tips of his fingers. He read for a long time. Though it was only half a page, he set it down. He picked up the statement, then set it down. He opened the folder. The photographs were on top. He saw the first one, saw the second, and closed it. The kitchen became so quiet that the hum of the refrigerator filled the whole space. Michael stood very slowly, very carefully, the way people stand when they are afraid their legs will not hold, and said, "Excuse me, just a minute." He went into the bathroom and closed the door. Robert sat at the table with his hands in front of him and watched the kitchen clock. The second hand went around and around. 1 minute, 3, 5, 7. He did not hurry him. He did not knock. "As much time as you need, son." When Michael came back, his eyes were red, and his voice was even and unfamiliar. He sat down and looked at the closed folder without touching it. "Dad, tell me honestly, does Sophie know she was being given all this garbage?" "No. She knows that for some reason the juice made her very sleepy." "Nothing more." "Good. She doesn't need to know more yet." A pause. "How long have you known?" "Since last Saturday." "You kept this for a week." "I needed to gather every fact and document before bringing it to you. I didn't want to give you empty suspicions you could talk yourself out of." Michael looked at his father for a long time, without blinking, then gave a short, joyless laugh. "Yeah, that's exactly your approach. First, fully locate the leak and check the whole circuit before showing me where it's actually dripping." "Force of habit," Robert answered. Michael looked at the folder once more, pushed it away, and took out his phone. "I need Carter's number." Michael spent the weekend at his father's house. He slept in his old room on the narrow bed, his feet hanging off the end. At breakfast, Sophie seated the plush fox on the chair beside her, pushed a plate toward her, and wagged her finger sternly. Fiona, come on, finish your oatmeal. Don't wiggle around, or I'll spill everything. What kind of culinary conflict do you two have going on over there? Robert smiled, sitting down beside her. Fiona is being picky. She says the oatmeal doesn't taste good, Sophie explained seriously. Tell Fiona I cooked that oatmeal for 20 minutes, and if she doesn't appreciate it, she can make the next batch herself. Sophie giggled brightly, covering her mouth with her hand. Grandpa, she has paws. She can't hold the pot. Then she should think about that before criticizing the cook. Michael watched them, then went into the other room and talked to Carter twice on the phone. On Saturday morning, he transferred money into a separate account. On Sunday, he drove alone to the gated subdivision. He told Karen he was picking up documents for insurance and photographed everything he found in the family folder in the cabinet. He came back 2 hours later and laid the images out on the kitchen table. Carefully, in order, missing nothing. Robert studied the shots closely. If you'd prepared for your finals like this when you were 21, we wouldn't have needed the chili. Michael only moved his shoulder wearily. Robert looked at his son and wondered where that precision came from. Not a single extra movement. Then he remembered and did not finish the thought. Michael did not call Karen once. She did not call him either, or her daughter. On Monday morning, Robert drove Sophie to school, walked her to the classroom door, made sure she went inside, watched her wave to him through the glass, and drove home to wait. Michael left for the subdivision at 9. Karen was sitting at the kitchen table with the laptop she often photographed for social media, with captions about their little nest and mugs arranged just right for the shot. She looked up and smiled. Oh, you're early today. No traffic for once. Want coffee? I just made a fresh pot. Michael sat across from her and slid Dr. Anderson's report across the table. Her smile disappeared instantly. It was not wiped away. It vanished as if someone had switched off the light behind a display window. And then Karen made her first mistake. Instead of asking what it was, she began explaining. Mike, what are you doing? Sophie really has had trouble sleeping lately. I just wanted to help her. She had a hard time settling down. I thought a little medicine to calm her down. Just a little. It's nothing. A little, Michael repeated. For 7 months, every evening, he held 10 seconds of silence. Robert would later ask, and his son would answer that he had been counting to himself. Then Michael took out the bank statement and placed it beside the report and put the photographs on top. Karen saw herself in the first picture and froze. Michael, for God's sake, just listen to me. I trusted you with my daughter, my home, and my name. He spoke quietly without raising his voice, and because of that, every word weighed more than a shout. You used all 3. What makes you think you have the right to judge me? She's my daughter, too. I love her. I give all of myself to her. You drugged her with medicine for months to free up your evenings for dates. Whatever beautiful story you tell yourself at night to smother your conscience, that's your responsibility, not mine. Karen said nothing. The laptop in front of her went to sleep. The screen went dark, and in the black reflection, she saw her own face for 1 second and turned away. You're taking Sophie? She asked. You did that, Michael answered, standing. Not me. He took the house keys from the countertop and left, closing the door carefully behind him. He got into the car, placed his hands on the steering wheel, and called his father. Well? Robert asked. She never did pour me that coffee, Michael replied dully. You'll survive. But I took the keys. What followed was not drama. It was endless paperwork, court hearings, folders with stapled pages, and exhausting waiting in corridors. You know, son, in 30 years at the plant, I filled out a ton of forms, reports, and logs. Robert shared with Michael on one of those evenings. But in these 2 months in court, I wrote more papers than in my whole career. At least at the plant, the vending machine coffee was tolerable. At court, they don't even have a machine, just the clerk's thermos, and that thing is locked up like evidence. 2 months later, the court ordered that Sophie would live with her father. Karen's attorney built the defense around stress and lonely motherhood, but William Carter presented the test results and the bank statement, where 7 months of pharmacy purchases formed one straight line. That was enough for the judge. Karen was granted the right to see her daughter, only in the presence of a CPS representative, until the investigation was complete. The district attorney's office opened a case for child endangerment and abuse. At the very first interview, investigators pressed Daniel Parker in detail. Our hero lover lasted exactly until the investigator's first question, Robert told his son. I've seen valves at the plant hold longer under pressure. Valves at least serve a useful function, Michael remarked dryly. Fair. The same cowardice that had allowed Parker not to ask questions about someone else's child for 7 months eventually turned against the woman he had supposedly loved. The house in the gated subdivision was listed for sale as part of the property division. Karen's social media account froze on that very post with the perfect kitchen. One evening, Sophie accidentally saw that old photo on her father's phone. Daddy, why did Mommy take pictures of mugs on the table? She asked in surprise. Because the mugs look pretty, Michael answered quietly. Why take pictures of mugs? They're just mugs. The display window life finally shattered. Sophie lived with Michael. Robert came over on weekends, helped with homework, and cooked dinner. In January, on one Saturday, Sophie came out of her room with Fiona under her arm, sat beside him in the kitchen while he was chopping vegetables, and asked, Grandpa, do you remember when you promised me really, really hard that you would tell Mommy yourself about that yucky juice? Robert set down the knife and turned to her. I remember, Soph. And did you really tell her? I did. You talked very seriously? Very seriously. And there won't be any more of it at all? There won't be any more. Not ever. Sophie nodded seriously, like a grown-up, and adjusted the toy on the table. Grandpa, Fiona says you're taking too long to peel the carrots. She's tired of watching. Robert said, that rushing in the kitchen is the shortest road to turning dinner into a visual lesson on culinary disasters. Sophie nodded with equal seriousness, whispered something into the fox's ear, and then ran back to her room. Robert stood with the knife in his hand, watched her go, and thought that in 30 years he had fixed hundreds of systems where something leaked, whistled, or worked wrong. Every time he had started the same way. Don't touch the compressor until you find the leak. He found it, and he fixed it. And if this story made you think about how easily a child's voice can be overlooked, tell me in the comments what you would have done in Robert's place, or whether you've ever seen a family secret come to light when no one expected it. If the story moved you, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one.